Let me touch that.
Good afternoon and welcome to the November 10th committee meeting of the Natchitoches Parish School Board. I would like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. And we'll start off with a roll call. Please, Ms. Revels.
Mr. Danzy.
Here.
Mr. Matuire.
Here.
Mr. Benefield.
Here.
Mr. Garner.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Present.
Mrs. Guidros.
Here.
Mrs. Broadway.
Here.
Mrs. McGaskey. Ms. Palmer.
Here.
Ms. Phelps.
Here.
And Ms. Harvey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And we'll start out the meeting with the superintendent's report.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Have just a few items today, some very important ones, though. Wanted to alert the board. Y'all have been asking about when school performance scores would come out. We have a date for that. School performance scores will come out November 16th, which I believe is next Wednesday. So as soon as I have the information, we will share that with you. We also got a really great update from LDOE. If you recall, a few months back, we got a call that we were the #1 district in proficiency growth on the whole. But this past week, we got an email telling us we were also in the top 7. They did not tell us if we were #1 or #7, but we were in the top 7 districts in terms of special education proficiency growth as well. And so they're actually getting us to be on a call with them, getting the SPED exciting news. Also, I believe last Thursday, we had a special called meeting to provide a resolution to Bessie with our concerns about the proposal for high school accountability. I can tell you today that as of, I believe, 3 o'clock, that policy or that proposal failed at Bessie. So your work was not for naught. It was effective. So that's good news there. Also, a bit of old business, but I just want to give you an update. If you recall from our last board meeting, we had to go back to the drawing board on the CEA with the city of Natchitoches. We will have that for you on Thursday. I will email you the contents of it prior to Thursday, but we could not add it to the board. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the old board meeting schedule. Next Tuesday, I will provide you the CEA as it's gone back and forth between the city and us. They've had some stuff they wanted to add. We had some stuff we wanted to add. And so we finally have it now, but not soon enough to put it on the agenda for today. And I'll have that to y'all hopefully tomorrow. A few things I want to highlight. Obviously, this week, Veterans Day is tomorrow. And I had the privilege of being at Lakeview today with several of the board members. It was a very solemn solemn occasion, and it was put on by the students, which made it even neater of an experience. And it was just really a great time. Students were so well behaved and so respectful of the veterans. And I don't know about Pastor Harris and Mr. Garner, but I just thought it was really well done. Also, I want to thank the Natchitoches Federation of Teachers. They put on reading events at LP Vaughn and Weaver this past month, and those were very well attended, and we appreciate their partnership and them supporting us in literacy endeavors. Also want to highlight our Natchitoches Central Volleyball girls. They were the first team in the history of the program to win a playoff game, and they did excellent. I was there. Numerous folks of y'all were there. Unfortunately, they fell in the second round to the #9 team in the state, but still made some history, so we're very proud of them, and we will get them to come to the next board meeting, hopefully, and share with us some of their exploits during the season. Also, Natchitoches Central, we want to highlight their FFA team, won first in nationals for their marketing proposal, and that was really exciting because they're competing with obviously everyone from around the nation. So, all of these good things, whether it's the SPED numbers, our FFA, our sports, all these things that just show that great things are going on right now and a lot to celebrate. I would like to now turn it over to Mr. Ben Legrand with Teaching and Learning. We promised y'all last year that we were going to start doing a quarterly data review of where our schools are at when we do these quarterly data reviews with our schools. And so we've completed the first quarterly data review with the schools. And so now Mr. Ben can take y'all kind of in a overhead view of where we're at district-wide as it stands in Q1.
Good evening. Okay, Mr. Kozak, can you give it to us? All right, so we talk a lot about our vision plan, and this is the report of progress from our vision plan. And we're going to show you how we compared this time last year with our quarterly proficiency checks to how we have done at this point this year. In some cases, in other cases, we'll just be able to look at where we are right now. But first, we want to look at the goals we have set for this year. So, Mr. Kozad, next slide. So, when we look at this, we look at grades 3 through 8, and we see that in 2022, we were at 40%. That's 40% achievement proficiency. So what is proficiency? Proficiency is the percentage of students who score mastery or advanced when they take a test. You can score unsatisfactory, you can score approaching basic, you can score basic, you can score and so in 2022, as a group, grades 3 through 8 were at 40% proficiency, and so we have set our goal for this year, for when we get to the end of this year, to be at 50% proficiency in ELA. Respectively, going down the line, 2022 we were at 30%. This year we've set it for 44%. In 2022, in social studies, we were at 24% proficiency, and we've set the goal for 39% proficiency by the end of this school year. Science, in 22, we were at 25% proficiency. We've set our goal to be at 40% proficiency by the end of this year. We move over to the high school side. English 1, in 2022, we were 30% proficient. We're looking to be at 51 by the end of this year. English 2, we were at 33% proficiency. We're looking to be at 52. Algebra 1, we were at 39%, and we're looking to move up to 51. In geometry, we were at 30%, and we're looking to move up to 45. In U.S. history, we were at 34% proficient at the end of last year. We're looking to move to 49%. And biology, in 2022, we were 5% proficient, and we're looking to make a really big gain there, moving up to 34% proficient. Yes, ma'am.
Those are very, very impressive. Are you nervous? That's.
Oh, I think they're realistic goals, and if we come in just underneath one of those, people might be concerned with not making it, but what did you do? You grew. You made progress,
Right.
and progress is always a good thing. So it's not the end of the world, but we believe we can do this.
Is there any reason why biology was?
There are reasons. I think the point in time where a lot of kids take biology and the schedule has been adjusted. I think there are quite a few adjustments that have been made and things we're looking at, as well as the curriculum and how we teach, and I think we can expect a nice gain.
Do we know how the rest of the state was doing in biology?
I think it is a lower scoring area across the board. Can't speak to one district compared to another.
Do you know why it was so low scoring?
Well, Dr. Eloy, do you want?
And we are not making an excuse, because whether there is a legitimate reason or not, 5% is not okay. But if you look at the majority of our students who took this obviously came from Natchitoches Central, and last year they were shifting their schedule where now traditionally biology is taken in the sophomore year, but they will be shifting that to where it would be taken in the freshman year. Well, the year you make that shift, you still have students who would be caught in that, and they would have to take it. Students who had already failed it had to take it again. A large portion of that, of the students who took biology last year, were students who had already failed it. And so that was the group, and so we did see scores go down. That was somewhat predicted by us that would happen. But regardless of that prediction, regardless of that situation, regardless of students being repeaters in that class, the majority of them last year, we still agree that 5% is not okay in terms of moving forward.
And that's overall 5%.
Correct. Yeah, so
Worse.
that's only one piece of what we're talking about. Statewide, if you talk about the reason that typically, and we don't see this necessarily here as much, typically you see two courses that are lower than everyone else, and that's biology and U.S. history, and that is because there is a way that if a student if they pass biology, then for graduation requirements, they don't have to pass U.S. history, and vice versa if they take U.S. history first. So we do see some students who are aware of that, who sometimes don't perform as well when they know that that's not a graduation requirement. But again, that's only a small piece. It doesn't color the entire narrative of why those scores are typically lower for the state.
And I see where, I'm gonna let you just, and I see where you say that there are goals in place, and so I know that there are specific, you have something in place specifically to assist tools and resources to reach those goals.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're looking maybe to look at a possibility that you will achieve it, but it's not guaranteed.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a probability,
Yes.
Palmer had a
We
question.
hope a strong probability.
yes.
I had a question about like ELA and social studies. Like, are there any efforts being made for the lower grades, like pre-K through second?
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
keyboarding? Because like social studies, they have to type like
Yes, ma'am.
long reports, like
Mhm.
in English, like an essay.
Right.
So are our kids
Yeah.
having an opportunity to go to the computer labs and work on keyboarding or anything
First
of
of
that
all,
nature?
now all kids have an iPad, and a lot of the work is done on an iPad, and so they are should be feeling a lot more comfortable with working and answering and writing through that now than say 2 years ago. We do have WIN, and WIN is a time where we can teach and work on other things. So there is a tier of WIN where something like keyboarding, a lot of schools do offer it to students. It might be a rotational thing that mixes with other classes, but some of it is touched there, yes.
Okay, also, like, what is the curriculum right now for second, I would say, I guess, maybe first and second grade for writing?
There is a component built in where students do have to write as part of the work they do. And there are specific ways that it is scored, which would be the same way that when they're assessed would be scored. The screening that students get from K to 2 is primarily about their reading ability, but we're also given our own proficiency checks, and it does require them to write in that.
But what I'm asking is, next page, we don't have a writing curriculum? Like, one time it was Nancy Fester or something like that? Or?
We don't have one that's just a standalone, a class they go to, and that's what they do every day. No,
Oh, no, I know, like, because they're in a class all day, but do they have like a curriculum that a time where it's writing? They get to write from like 2 to 2:30.
no, ma'am, not a designated time every day at the same time.
So it's not included in the
It
schedule.
is blended into every curriculum. Every curriculum has a piece and a part where they have to write.
But no, teaching them how to write a paragraph,
And the
introduction, your body.
That is part of ELA and part of that
Right,
curriculum.
so doing ELA, and I'm talking about the lower grades.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The
And
L.
even-
Oh, I'm sorry. The L curriculum is what we use in those grades, and
It does have a
it
component.
had a portion of that is writing. So it's the L curriculum, but it's not.
Yes.
It's not. This is the reading curriculum, and this is the writing curriculum. It's all one big combination.
And it probably has a richer portion of writing than maybe what we've done in the past. That's one reason we moved to that.
Okay.
Mr. Harris?
So these are not just ghost numbers, but because you all have assessed the,
Those numbers come from the proficiency on last year's testing, 2022.
I'm saying like in ELA, you came from 40 and you're saying that we're going to move to 50.
Yes,
That's because of the assessment
right.
thing and with using all of your resources,
Yes, sir.
teachers and things, input and things that you can get to that number,
Yes.
you believe.
And that's a number we seek to reach. And then next year, hopefully, that 50% will be over here in parentheses, and there's going to be a number like 60 up there next.
Yeah. All right.
So basically, feasibility factors there because you have all the resources and everything in place.
Oh, sure.
when-
Yes, ma'am.
When it's needed.
Thank you so much for letting us interrupt you with questions. I'm just
That's
very
okay.
impressed with your
okay.
goals. That's
Well, those are just
very impressive.
goals. I do have some data to show you.
Yeah.
So if you'd like
Because
to,
I know it's just not numbers being thrown up because anybody who
sure. Yeah,
does what we do,
right.
you're not just putting out numbers,
No, no.
you know.
Okay, Mr. Cozad, next slide. So this slide is about grades 3 through 8, and again, it is about proficiency progress. And if you recall, we have our setup where we go 1 quarter, 9 weeks, and at the end of that quarter, we give what we call a proficiency check. And a proficiency check is a small test that is a lot like the LEAP test, and it is on the standards that were taught in that 9-week time, and it tells us where kids are. And it's designed so that after just 1/4 of the year, we can get a real good piece of data on where kids are, and then we come in to data meetings with Dr. Eloy in my department, and schools present where they are and where they see strengths and weaknesses, and they identify needs, and they even write a plan that they leave that meeting with as to what they're going to do in the coming quarter, which is right now. They're working right now to improve this or focus on those areas. So this is comparing where we were at the first quarter last year, at this time last year, the gray bar, with where we are now. So after the first proficiency check, at the end of the 9 weeks, last year, we were at, I believe that's going to be 37% on that gray bar in ELA, 37% proficient. And at the end of this time, we have moved up, we've made progress to 40% being proficient. So that's growth. In math, we moved from, what am I looking at, 33% up to 35, 36% proficient. So again, we moved up. That's progress. In science, you can see the bars are not as high, but we did progress. We did move ahead from last year at this time to now. And in social studies, you can see that we did progress. So I just want to point out that, we've come so far since this time last year. And our schools are so much more aware of the data. With the professional day we had at the end of the quarter, what happened in that day was the principal reviewed the school's data like this, and then the teacher sat down and reviewed the data of their own students that they teach. And the result of that is everybody understands where we are, and they take ownership. And everybody wants to grow, so everybody's working hard now to grow. So the next time you see me, we're going to be talking about the comparison of that blue bar in the first quarter of this year to what what are we doing to the second quarter? We're going to be looking at comparing first quarter to second quarter of this year. And hopefully, we're going to see growth everywhere again. Okay, next slide, Mr. Cozad. Now, here we go back to high school. We did not and were not in a position last year to do a proficiency check in high school in the first quarter. So we don't have anything to compare to. What you're looking at here is the first quarter results of this year when we gave that proficiency check to our high school students. And this is what they scored. 16% proficient in English 1, 25% in English 2, 18% in Algebra 1, 35% in Geometry,
Realize that these are quarterly results, but this is halfway through a semester, whereas your results from your 3 through 8 really is a quarter result.
Yeah. Yeah, these students will take LEAP 2025 at the midpoint of this year. And, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, so that's where we are right now with high school data. Okay, Mr. Cozad. This is about third graders, and we have a goal that based on the screener that we have named to use, which is determined by the state, that at the beginning of the third grade year of 2024-25, that all third graders are going to be reading on level. And that's a state goal as well. So let's see what we have next, Mr. Cozad. Now, this is a promising look right here. This is the bar on the left is at the end of 2021, and it is the number of students on grade level, reading on grade level, using the screener Acadience. And then the blue bar is where we were after the first quarter screener, or the beginning of the year screener administered just a few weeks ago. So you can see our kindergartners grew, our first graders significantly grew, our second graders grew, and our third graders grew. So literacy is on the rise according to these results, which is promising. Not where we want it to be, because you notice none of those bars even reach 50% yet, but they are moving, we're moving ahead.
Why do we see a regression between your second grade and third grade on both years? You see that loss?
Yes, sir.
And I realize the curriculum is probably a little tougher, a little more rigor, but why do we see that gap?
Those third graders were what? Kindergarten, first graders during the COVID time, right? They had some lost time there in school.
Okay.
I think that could account for some of it.
If you talk to Dr. Brumley's office, he specifically singles out our third grade cohort as the most at risk due to the COVID pandemic. And he
Right.
speaks on that frequently.
Yeah.
What is the reason for that specifically?
I think because if you recall, they would have been in kindergarten when we were taken out of school, so they missed a portion of
Spring.
kindergarten. Then many of them were going to be at home during first grade. So just those 2 years alone would have been foundational for their reading ability. And then add to that how many times many of them got quarantined their next year in second grade.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's difficult times
Yeah.
for them.
Okay, next slide, Mr. Cozad. So attendance. Our numbers represent what we call average daily attendance, and it's a percentage. And what that means is when you see a percentage on attendance like where we are right now, what that stands for is if you went to a school and you looked on the average day in this time, if it's 95%, you would see 95% of the students in class in that school. If it's 40%, you would see 40%. That's what it represents. So, next slide, Mr. Cozad. Our goal is 95% as a district. So, in 2022, the bar on the left, what is that, 85? That was our average daily attendance for last year. And look where it is today. It's at 91. Our goal is 95. And we have put some measures in place to go find kids, to get them in school, to keep them in school. And that's going well and that's working. We're going to keep doing that. But that's a nice sign right there, and it's nice progress toward where we want to be. We do have some, that's an average of all the schools. We do have schools who are at the goal right now, and some that are a little bit below. All right, Mr. Cozad. Discipline. Natchitoches Parish School Board will have no more than 12% out-of-school suspensions. That's the goal we have set for every school. Now, that doesn't mean the percentage of suspensions made by the school. That means the percentage of kids that are suspended. So, we've got a goal for 12%. The state says that you cannot have more than 20% suspended, and if you do, your school gets a label, which we have several schools with that label, and you must go 2 years underneath that to work out of that label. We've got some schools that are in a position to come out by the end of this year and hopefully never go back. So let's see where we are right now. Next slide. So in 2021, the gray bar, now I don't like this graph because the numbers on the left, keep in mind, they only go up to 4.5, and our goal is 12%. So this is a little bit distorted, but the gray bar, we finished the year last year at 2.5% in out-of-school suspensions at this point. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. At this point, that's where we were. Right now, you can see we're up there almost to 4%. But we still think 4% is a good place to be when your overall goal is 12%. So I think if you ask why it's higher now than last year, I think one reasonable deduction there is we have a lot more kids in school now. A lot of kids were at home most of last year, especially in the first half, where they're in with us this time. And so that could account for this. But still, that graph looks like a big difference. I mean, you're not talking about much, and we're significantly underneath where we want to be right now anyway. And I think that's everything we have for you.
Thank you so much. Very good information. Are you through?
That concludes my superintendent report.
If we can add to the superintendent's report some discussion on what kind of format we're going to use next month for the evaluation. Have we made any kind of plans for the superintendent's evaluation?
Yes, Mrs. Broadway has been handling that for us, and
I think,
you want to address?
yes, and I think this is a good time to remind everybody that if there was anything in addition to what was included on the previous year's evaluation form, if y'all want to send that to me through my school board email, that way we can incorporate that into the evaluation form.
Okay, I have a question too. I also would like for us to have more time to spend on that, maybe get the paperwork on committee meeting night and then present it on the board meeting night, just give us
Right.
some time to work on it.
We could possibly email it. If everyone turns in, if you need any changes, the quicker you turn that in, she can even email it before
Yes.
next
Absolutely.
month. So that way you can have it in hand to be praying over it and thinking about it.
Can you send everything, the last version? out?
Absolutely.
That way we can, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benefield. All right, moving along to our consent agenda. We have item 3C, out-of-state travel, Mr. Brian Williams. You'll see his attachment there. He's wanting to attend a Hoop Fest in Texarkana. So you'll have the chance to review that. And then moving along to our informational reports, I do not see Miss Washington here, but do we have any updates from her, or?
She She did not contact me, so I'll have to get in touch with her and because I know she came last week for the board meeting because of the schedule change, and I told her it was this week. So I'm assuming there's some sort of miscommunication here.
Okay, and so if she has anything, she can submit it for next.
Yes, ma'am. Correct.
Okay, item 4B, child nutrition, Mrs. Hicks.
Evening, everybody. Things are going well in child nutrition. Our September claim was over $460,000, which is a large claim. And what I'm most excited about is we are feeding nearly 80% of our kids lunch every day. 78% of our kids are eating with us. So that's a great thing. Breakfast is a little bit less. We're at 42% of our students eating breakfast with us, and I kind of want to explore what that's about. We'd like to feed more of them breakfast if we could. I turned in our October claim this week. It was $302,000. That is because we only had 14 claiming days in October. It's significantly less than September, but that's why. And we are continuing to work on our dishwashers and getting those in to try and defray some of the cost of paper goods that are so expensive right now. I'm not going to read this word for word. That's the gist of it. Do you guys have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
With the breakfast, can you tell us like which schools are at the lowest?
I could if I had their edit checks with me because that's not information that's in front of me, but if you would like me to give you some numbers, I'll be happy to email them to you. It's typically, you know, in high school, a lot of the kids don't get there until right at time to go to class. So those numbers are usually some of our lowest. The younger students are typically the ones who eat the most. And that's a general idea, but of course, if you want specifics, I can get those for you.
Okay.
Someone asked me, some of my constituents, about children getting homemade meals. I know that it's a lot of kids, and if you can just inform us just quickly, do a lot of the meals come already prepared, and are they pre-prepared?
No, ma'am.
They're not.
No, they're not.
So
I think we're very lucky in that most of the food our students receive is prepared in our kitchen. We have some prepackaged breakfast items, but literally everything else is cooked in our kitchens.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Hicks? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the maintenance report, Mr. Shirley, and I don't see him with us
He's
tonight.
not able to make it tonight, but he will be available Thursday for his report.
Okay. Item 4D, personnel report, Mrs. Page. If y'all have any questions for her.
Yeah, because I'm not going to give a report other than to say that we're just so proud of our people. It's our people who make those amazing things happen that Mr. LeGrand talked about. The report is there. If you have a question or a comment, please let us know. I would like to. Did y'all say anything about our deceased person?
No, we will
Okay.
next Tuesday.
Okay. It's just happening too quickly. Too often. Okay.
Okay, any questions? Thank you, Ms. Page. All right, we will circle back to the budget update and sales tax report whenever Mr. Wascom arrives. So we'll move along to the finance, facility, service, and insurance report, Mr. Danzy.
5A, permission to advertise for bids. We have none this month. And item 5B, take appropriate action on bids. There's none this month, so.
Thank you, Mr. Danzy. Okay. That moves us along to item 6A, new position, English learner, paraprofessional. And you'll see the description and the attachment there. Do y'all have any questions in reference to this?
I do. I'm looking at the information. It says it was budgeted. When was it budgeted, and when was that budget revised to include this position? Why are we hired it in essentially end of the year or first part of next year as opposed to August?
So I'm going to have Ms. Rochelle come up because it's actually more of a change in job description than it is a new job. And I think she'll be able to answer all that for you.
Good evening. Yes, it's really a change in job description, and it is so that we could be in compliance with the law plan that we had to submit to the State Department. And so we just recently had one of our L tutors resign. If you notice, it should say Title I set aside. And so that's money that has been set aside in our original budget in order to meet specific needs for the L population, for the students who are recently identified. So at the beginning of each school year, we have our students who tested out. They were proficient on their ELP exam, and so they are no longer needing our services. So we monitor them for 2 years, and then we go through the screening process the first month of school. And so we, in order to ensure that we have the funding to meet those needs, we set aside money out of Title I from the top per the guidance of LDOE.
You said it was a title change, position change, basically just name change?
Yes, so currently we have 2 English learner tutors.
Okay.
One, he holds a bachelor's degree. He's certified in English learning supports. He needs about 2 additional courses to be considered an L coach. And so currently he's listed as a tutor. And we are hoping to, of course, we don't have this position listed as a paraprofessional. We can't just advance him to that next position. Not that that's what will happen, but we have to in order to be in compliance with our law plan, at LAU plan, we have to have an L paraprofessional, someone that could provide coaching support for our teachers. So we can shift from pull-out services with our L students to push in and coaching services for our teachers.
What grades do they accommodate?
We are from pre-K through 12th grade.
These 2 persons?
Yes.
There are 2?
We had 2. One recently resigned. She found another job, but we have 2 that's servicing 51 students at the moment.
So these,
They're
right,
all
they-
over the
they're
parish.
teaching English, teaching these people how to, right. Yes.
They're translating, they're supporting them be successful with their grade level curriculum.
So, and this is just a description change. It's basically already being done, but that's to be in compliance with federal guidelines.
If you look at the job responsibilities and duties, that's our tutors, our L tutors are currently performing these duties.
And as Mr. Benefield has asked the question, it's already been budgeted, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's set
I
aside.
think that's the most important thing that you wanted to.
It's not, we're not taking from our student funds.
Right, okay.
And these are certified professionals. What it said, para?
Yes, ma'am, they teach you how to speak English.
I heard you.
Espanol?
But, because it seems like with all the responsibilities that put, definitely require somebody who got that certification. It's a lot of major responsibility.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Rochelle.
Thank
Any
you.
additional questions?
Will there be an additional position, or will this be one?
Right now, because of budgeting, we only have the one position that we are able to support this school year, but we are hoping to grow our English learning coaching services with LDOE is leading the charge with some guidance that's coming from the state and some supports that's coming from the state. And with that, we are hoping to get some additional funds to allocate for our diverse learners. So with this job, it will make the third support staff? Actually, no. We just, as I stated before, we recently had one of our L tutors to resign. And so we have one now, so this would be two. So we'll have an L tutor, hopefully, and a L paraprofessional. That is a certified L coach. That's what we're looking for. Any other questions, comments?
So this is really not a new position, that's what you're saying, right?
It's really not a new position.
It's a name change.
It's a name change. We struggle with how to present this, but it is a name change.
We discussed, guys, just so y'all know, I mean, there was the ability to just say, well, let's just hire another para, but this is not just another para. And to be totally transparent, that would have circumvented the board's authority. So we needed to come because there was too much specificity to not bring it to y'all and just say, oh, no, it's just another para. No, this is an EL para. So it had to come this way. But no, it's not like we're just creating a new position. So.
Specialized.
English as a second language.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna move on. You said para, but this person is required to be certified. So why would they be called a paraprofessional? I heard you say coach, but here it's saying L paraprofessional.
It is a paraprofessional, and so certified not in the sense that they need to have a valid teaching certificate. They need to have certification, which is 4 classes that they're offered at LSUE. They're part of the LDOE's coaching plan for English for our L support staff. And so it's a certificate that they will receive after completing 4 classes. Not to be confused with a certified teacher.
You clarified it.
Okay.
I was a little bit confused.
Yes, ma'am, I'm glad I was able to do so for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you very much. Okay, moving along to the executive report, Mrs. Beverly Broadway.
Okay, item 7A, the NCHS update. This was put on the agenda by Ms. Palmer. No, it does not appear so. Okay. Item 7B, homeschool children and NPSB sports. This was an item tabled from our October meeting. And Dr. Eloy, I know that you shared with me some information that you found. Do you mind sharing that? And some of this should have been sent by email.
Yes, ma'am. So the first piece was Mr. Wascom was going to look into the insurance piece, which I sent y'all actually early today, and I apologize I didn't send that sooner. But what I can communicate to you is that insurance is not an issue in terms of homeschool students. Our policy right now, they said if you have homeschool students, if you don't have homeschool students, you're covered either way. So they did clarify that, and so Mr. Wascom's concerns were put at rest in terms of that. I also, the other piece is what I told you I would do is I would reach out to other districts in a more robust way. I did do that. We sent out 2 emails. One came from me, one came from Michael Falk, who is our executive director of the Superintendent Association. And the basic question was, do you allow homeschool or do you not allow homeschool? If you do, tell us what you do. We, out of 69 LEAs, we received 48 responses. 42 of those said no. 6 of them said yes. Of the 6 that said yes, all 6 of them, 5 of them said they leave it up to principal discretion. 1 of them said it was a district decision, and that was actually Cameron Parish, and their reasoning was, if you're familiar with Cameron Parish, they're a very small parish. They do it as a district because they don't have enough students to field some of their larger teams for football and basketball, so they do it for that reason. But every other district I spoke to who allows it, those other 5, allows it on a principal-by-principal basis. I did express to Ms. Broadway that if we were to do that, I would not be against that or for that either way. I'm not going to fight that. Although I just think it's important to note that it's possible that a student could be allowed at one school, and then when they age up and go to another school in the district, they would not be allowed, which could also land us kind of in the same quandary, I guess you could say. No one had of the 6 who allow it, none of them had a quote-unquote plan. One district did send me their plan, and then I quickly realized that that was just the LHSAA plan that's on their website for what you are supposed to do. And then no one who doesn't allow it gave any real all their talking points were similar. You know, they're not our students. The things that y'all have all heard, boilerplate type of responses. But that's kind of all the information we gathered over the past month.
Thank you. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of where we left off with the discussion is there were some concerns about insurance and liability and being covered in case there was an issue. And it seems like that's not really a concern because that has been taken care of through our insurance policy. You know, the other piece just being the accountability piece, and there seems to be a few things in place through the LHSAA as far as needing to have certain GPAs and things of that nature. And that would be very simple to borrow if we wanted to from the LHSAA. Do we have any other comments or any more discussion points?
Do we allow any students in any other area other than sports, any clubs or anything else right now?
I think 4-H has children who are homeschooled kids, right? Am I?
Not that I am aware of. That it would be news to me if that is being allowed at one school. I'm not aware of it.
I believe we do have some homeschool kids in 4-H.
I thought they had their own program. The school, I know not homeschool, but the private schools have their own 4-H program. Some of them do, but I didn't know that. As long as I've been dealing with the 4-H with my kids in it, we didn't have.
We should find out. I can tell you that.
Well, because
do need a
because the
definitive
4-H
answer.
shooting sports is a big thing, and are we going to allow? I know the insurance is one thing for sports, but is it the same thing with the shooting sports?
Now, 4-H is a separate entity, though. 4-H is not it is a club that
It's a club that's held on the school site.
Well, if you're talking about shooting sports, though, that is not held on the school site. That is completely separate. So shooting sports would really be a non-issue because that's something that's handled through the 4-H itself. They're not practicing shooting sports on a school campus.
Actually, they used to at Marthville.
But they don't now.
And
They go to the shooting range.
I mean, if you have your initial meetings and your club is established at a school, but yet you do the actual shooting at another site, is that an issue? I just want to raise the question.
So the homeschool students, though, many of them do have, it is a 4-H homeschool club because 4-H is not, 4-H in itself is its own entity. It's not something that we operate through the school system. 4-H comes into the school and they do their presentations, they hold their club meetings, but then there's a lot of club meetings that are outside of the school setting. For instance, they have junior leaders, which is Monday night, and it's not on school campuses. Shooting sports meetings are not on school campuses. Those are things that are held away. It's just your it's your monthly meetings that are held on some school sites.
So, just for clarification, because are we saying that, because I do know there's homeschool students involved in 4-H, but are we saying that at the district level or they have their own clubs, or are we saying that they participate in school-based clubs in Natchitoches Parish, at Natchitoches Parish schools?
So I'm not the expert on it, but I do know that there are homeschool groups that have their own 4-H.
And that's my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that exists, I don't think there are students who are necessarily participating in the Provençal 4-H who are homeschool.
If it is, we need to find out.
But actually, we're kind of getting into the weeds
Yeah.
here because the subject is homeschool children and NPSB sports, not clubs.
And I think, because, we kind of start, delving into things like other extracurricular activities and things like that. And I really think that that's not the same thing as looking at the sports, because when we talk about things like clubs like FBLA, 4-H, Beta Club, whatever it may be, those can be done through your homeschool setting very easily because it doesn't require a certain number of children. Whereas when we're talking about athletics, we're talking about football, basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, so forth and so on, we're talking about a required number of children who are of age to participate. And so I think that's where this is a unique scenario. This is outside of other clubs and organizations and activities. And what we have seen is that this is not going to be a sticking point when it comes to insurance because we're already covered. And really what we're doing is we're just expanding the opportunity for children in our community to shine. So instead of having these children potentially go to, not be able to participate or maybe even go to other parishes and participate, we get to keep that talent here. We get to allow those children to shine to the best of their ability. We allow them to socialize and engage with children from all across the parish. I think it's a great opportunity for these children.
What about the grading scale? How is that involved? I mean, how does that play into with homeschool children? How does that compare if you have to have a C average for a certain sport? Does that compare with our standards for scoring?
So I think that's something that we can maybe hammer out and see how we would address that. I mean, I think we can understand that even from class to class and from school to school, sometimes grading can be a little variable. For instance, if you are looking at does a C in a regular class versus an honors class versus an AP class versus a dual enrollment versus a gifted class, those are all C's, but to a different degree, to a different standard. So I think that we can acknowledge the fact that there's variability amongst grades just within a single school, much less across schools. I think that we can also look at how would we like to incorporate that accountability piece with our homeschool groups.
But who we gonna put in charge to check all that? To check the scoring from the parents and stuff?
Again, I think that's something that we can work on. We're not talking about hundreds of children. We're talking about, potentially a handful of children here and there. Because, we do have to go back and realize we've been doing this. Up until this year, we've had homeschool children participating in sports at various schools. And, maybe we can find out what were they doing beforehand. Was the coach asking them to provide a report? If so, what did that look like? We can find that out. Like I said, this is really not a new issue. This is just an issue that's been brought to light because of some changes that have been made.
You're stating that we've had homeschool children participating in public school sports here in Natchitoches?
Yes, ma'am.
District?
Yes, ma'am.
But we didn't have no
Weren't aware.
policy stating that they could or couldn't, so that's why now we need to make a policy if we're gonna let them or we're not gonna let them.
And I think that that's something that we could do. I believe when we spoke, you said that Caddo Parish had a very robust homeschool participation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And I'm trying to remember the context. I didn't provide the email, but I was told, number one, they allow it, and then I cannot recall the conversation, but I was told that they have a pretty robust partnership with some local homeschool groupings, and I apologize, but I cannot recall the complete context of that conversation.
Right, and I completely understand that. And I'm just saying, these things are in place. Again, we've been doing it. We just recently kind of put a pause on it. We have a neighboring parish that apparently has a phenomenal, relationship with their homeschool groups, and maybe we could just kind of check in and see what they're doing.
Okay, so if we make in considering the participation of homeschool students in public school sports, making a policy to allow them to do so, are we looking at considering the fact that, do we ask that their grades also be considered as a part of the Natchitoches School District?
So, excuse me, the LHSA has it's not really a policy, it's kind of guidance, and it just says, I mean, really you don't have to adopt anything new in terms of the grades, because we already have 2 policies in our policy handbook that talk about the grades you have to have for sports and athletics and all these different things. And so you would just say that you have to comply with this. The one thing that I feel is a little bit up in the air is that none of these districts, whether they were allowing it or not allowing it, none of them had a policy to share that says, we have a policy that says, no, we don't allow it, or we have a policy. So, and I did not, because I don't know where the direction of the board is, we do not have a policy in preparation that either says we are not allowing it, which I don't necessarily know if you have to have a policy for that, or a policy that really gets into the minutia of we allow it, ... So there has not been a policy created. Now that's something we could easily talk to LSBA and they could create for us based on y'all's direction, but y'all would not necessarily be voting Tuesday on a completed policy. You'd be voting maybe to get me to create a policy, I guess.
I think we need to consider all the factors before we make a major decision of this nature as far as a policy to allow them to participate. So, yeah, all the factors.
Our students that have participated in the past from homeschool, they just follow the guidelines of the other students with the sports state?
Yes, ma'am. I think what Ms. Broadway was discussing earlier, or, well, she was responding to someone else's question was, so if it says, and I can't remember the exact policy, but you have to maintain a 2.5 GPA.
Like a C average?
Yes, ma'am. If that's the policy for Natchitoches Parish Schools, then, we put all our we have a pupil progression that says you have to have 2 grades per week, every week. They have to be these type of grades. They go in, we do all this stuff. We get a grade spit out at us, basically. In the age thing. Now, the age thing is easily taken care of through LHSA. It's not talking about the junior high because there's not really a governing body for junior high athletics. So there's a real formality to grades in our district. I guess what we're saying is we can't speak to the formality, or maybe in some cases the lack of formality. We just can't speak to how grades are done in individual homeschool groupings. And so if a parent says, yes, my student has a 2.5, we would have to discuss what that would need to look like for us to accept it. Is it just the parent saying they have a 2.5?
We need verification.
And so I don't know what that necessarily looks like. I don't know if y'all want to get into that type of the weeds type of thing, because that is, I don't know if every,
Doing it before.
I think it would,
Not checking?
I would not be able to tell you exactly how every school was doing that. There was probably at the junior high level not a whole lot of checking. At the high school level, they have to maintain records, and I just don't know what the homeschool record looked like that the LHSAA was looking at. Because you have to have records at the high school because LHSAA will come in and inspect your records and audit you routinely. And they will fine you if it's not up to date.
One more question. I thought an issue was the insurance, and he was supposed to check on it.
Yes, ma'am. He did. It's not an issue. The insurance is not an issue. They would be covered if they play sports with us.
Oh, okay.
I can see where, okay, what we're gonna do, I can see allowing it cause a problem. Because, okay, if my son or my daughter child is just as good as the homeschool child, the coach picked the homeschool child. We're gonna have that public school parent coming, gonna be standing right there. Why are we letting this private school kid and y'all getting money off of my kid, where this the private school kid, you're not getting nothing off of it. And my child being from pre-K to whatever grade they in, been in this school system, then you're gonna bump them for private school kid. And we are all elected as a public, for the public school kids, for them to shine, not for the private school kids or homeschool kids to shine. That's where we're gonna come in, why create a problem that's not a problem?
Well, and I mean, I think that we could really say that to how we got in this position to begin with, because we were allowing homeschool children and then we paused. And so we have interrupted what we were traditionally doing. So had we just let things go the way they'd been going, homeschool children have been doing this the whole time. We haven't had any complaints in the past with homeschool children bumping any public school children. And you're right, our primary goal is, you know, a focus on education in the public school system. However, we have constituents and we have voters who choose to homeschool their children or send their children to private school, and we still represent them as well. And when it comes to tryouts, I think coaches really are going to be looking for the most talent they can get. I don't think they're going to have preference or bias. I really think they're just going to want to choose the best teammate that they can for the team that they're creating. And again, this is really just, I think we're just talking about a small population within our parish. The majority of the children who are comprising these teams are still going to be the public school children. And again, I think we are here still to serve all of our constituents, and it does include sometimes people who choose homeschool and private school.
I'm just curious if the homeschool children get the same experience as a public school child. And what I mean by that is a lot of your sports teams have third block PE or fourth block PE. Does the homeschool child come for PE and stay for practice, or do they just show up at practice? And I'm asking because I don't know. And I'm worried about their experience of fitting in and being accepted by all the kids if they're not there for
Camaraderie.
exactly. That's all.
Yeah, the vast majority of the students who were involved, I think traditionally, historically, in athletics, who were homeschooled, were going to be your junior high athletes, which those are after school practices. When I think the only thing I can reference is I know we've had in the past at the high school level, at the high schools, some football players. I'm sure there's been other homeschool students in other sports, but I can only speak to the football. And I know the situations I'm aware of, they did come up during fourth block and participate in that block period. I don't know if that was a universal thing that was done with every student, if their schedule's always aligned, but I know the instances I'm aware of, that's what occurred.
And then I wonder about the expenses too. And I know we could sit here all night and wonder about all the pros and cons, but when I think about resources potentially being taken away from the kids who are enrolled in our system and given to kids who are not, that does make me worry a little bit budget-wise. And so would a homeschool parent be tasked with paying the entire bill per se, because not many sports are free?
I think it would be difficult because what we're talking about here is mainly what homeschool students are not contributing is their MFP dollars. And what you're looking at with MFP dollars, say it's $5,600, and that's not an exact number, but it's around about, if it's $5,600 and I don't know, let's just talk about, say we have 100 coaches in the parish, and we could look at how much all their salaries are together just for the coaching aspect, and then somehow derive some sort of how many dollars of that $5,600 go towards that. I think that's, and I'm just talking like I'm a auditor or a CPA. That's the way I could come about trying to decide a figure on what the actual input is. But I do think at the same time that would probably be somewhat difficult because I'm sure there's variables I'm not thinking of in terms of that. But that's the main funding source that we don't receive from homeschool students that we do receive from public school students.
So you're talking possibly, excuse me, like a registration fee for any?
Well, I'm not offering that up. I'm just saying if that was something that the board would want to say, hey, you know, you are paying this, but you're not. I mean, I'm sure Lee could figure out what that figure looks like and assess that as because there are certain fees that we assess to all sports and things of that nature. I don't know if that's something that the board would be interested in doing. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but I'm sure he could come up with some sort of figure as to what that is or would be.
I think I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think one thing we can all agree on, we just can't have a policy that says yes or no. No, we can. We can have a policy that says no. But if we have a policy that says yes, there's lots of factors that need to be included in that policy.
And that's my issue right now is whenever we look at policies, even when we used to call Forethought, now we call LSBA, there's usually some sort of template. And so even if I call LSBA today and I say, we want to allow this, they're going to need some more feedback from y'all of, okay, you want to allow this, but besides just a big piece of paper that says yes, what are the pieces y'all want? So, and I'm not trying to push this down the road at all anymore, but we do have the policy committee. If there were specific pieces that y'all would want in there, then I could get that to Mr. Garrett and Dr. Pope, and they could work on a framework that has some of the pieces in place. But I mean, we're sitting here, we're saying, number one, is it yes? But then, you know, what are grades looking like? Is there a fee assessed to it? Then you also have to have it, you know, is it just our discipline policy? All those different type of things, but I don't necessarily know right now. Right now, I don't know if y'all want it to be yes or no, but I also don't know if it is a yes, the nuances within that yes of what that policy needs to look like.
Right.
And you're talking about discipline policy, so, okay, we let a homeschool kid come to school to play sports. Where that home kid's school starts a fight or hurts some the public school kids, how that child gonna be disciplined because it's not our child? So we can't discipline. Only other thing, I guess, if it hurt it worse enough, have it arrested. But how can you discipline a child and it's not even your student?
I think the only way you could at that point, the only leverage you have in that situation is the activity. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, some sports do have specific behavior codes to them themselves, and then often what they do is it's suspension from games, sometimes removal from the team. So I think that, you know, looking at the behavioral aspect, that's actually probably pretty straightforward. And it's going to be just behavioral issues that affect any child on the team, because usually that is how it's handled, is it's handled by either missing game time or eventually removal from the team itself. Kind of coming back to the finances though for just a moment, you know, we did mention at the last meeting that the majority of the sports are self-funded. You know, parents are paying in or they're fundraising for those sports themselves. Some of the sports like, some of the more expensive sports like football, that's paid for through some BRE funding, which again, anybody who owns property in the parish, they're contributing to that. If we're talking about coaches' fees, you know, we could talk about all the children who their MFP dollars go towards paying those coaches' salaries, but never play on a sport themselves. So I kind of think that that might not be as big of an issue as we're concerned that it might be. But I do think that we can come back and we can look at having behavioral policies for participation on the sports, and with removal, sitting out from games or removal absolutely being an issue, it being a disciplinary action. And then maybe just looking again at how do we want to assess grades. Now, again, we've got a neighboring parish who has been doing this, and I think it might be easy for us to reach up there and kind of see how are they handling the grading situation. So I think these are all things, I think these are all great concerns, but I think these are all concerns that can be addressed.
I have a question. Are you strictly talking about just homeschool students, not public or not private school people that doesn't offer sports to be able to come and join and play too?
Well, I will say that I know that there are some smaller private schools who their children have been able to participate in our sports. That is part of the history in our parish, is we've had some of the smaller private schools and their children have participated with us.
The next question is it going to stop with just sports, or what's going to keep them from coming back, want to join FFA, ROTC, and other things in the
We halfway discussed that, but I'm looking at a big monster down the road that's already surfaced, and that is that there is a private school, as we speak, that's they're gonna have either a football team or they're gonna play on other football teams. I remember LSMSA allows their students to come and play football. I know that. And swimming, things like that. Things that they don't have.
And that was by an act of the legislature.
Okay, because they are considered a public school.
Correct. And I talked to Dr. Horton over there, and he walked me through it. Number one, it was an act of the legislature, and number two, those students' MFP are following them into LSMSA, was his explanation.
Okay, so let's get back to where we were doing it, and now we're not. When did we stop doing it?
That was the beginning of this school year.
Okay.
It's in reference to the fact that we realized after an incident that we did not have a policy.
Okay.
And in lieu of a policy, the superintendent is allowed to act. But then after I did that, it was some families brought to Miss Broadway's attention that we were no longer doing that, and that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of where we're at.
So I believe that what we need to do before we say yay, nay, or anything else, we need to find us a policy. Because if we don't, and we say yay, we're going to open some other doors, whether we like it or not. You know? So I think that's what we've been trying to do.
I can tell you that on board docs and also, board docs, we can search the entire nation and we can probably find a homeschool policy in the nation. I can't assure you of that. The only issue with that will be it may have some nuances that are specific to that state, but that's not something that's not easily overcome. So there's potential that by Tuesday I could have some sort of template for y'all. I just did not know necessarily that y'all wanted a policy for tonight because we were kind of in the dark on it, I guess.
Well, I think we need to have it by Tuesday because personally I took an oath to protect our system. And I don't want me to make a decision that compromises this system. And I hope everybody who took that same oath feels the same way.
I feel like we do, but I also feel like we shouldn't just go grab a policy. I feel like that should be something that we build, something that we work together with and see what that looks like. Because what may work in New York may not work here. But I do applaud the fact that we do have students that want to play sports for us. That's a good problem to have, that you want kids involved in our system. But we need to do it the right way to make sure they have a good experience, safe experience, finances are covered, and our board is covered. And just like Dr. Eloy said and Pastor Harris alluded to, there was a reason why we stopped. And that was a good reason. And it was a reason that made us back up and look at what we're doing. And I think it's easy to say have something ready for Tuesday night, but I don't think I'm prepared to vote Tuesday night one way or the other. But I do feel like it is time sensitive because spring will be here before you know it, and people will be trying out for football and other sports. So in the interest of time, I wouldn't be prepared to.
We are a policy-making board, and the fact that we've been operating without a policy allowing students,
It's scary.
concerns me a little.
It's scary.
And I can tell y'all every time the lawyers come to us about anything, the first thing they do if they're sniffing around for something done wrong is what is your policy? And so say something were to happen and they'd be covered by insurance, but one of the things they they get you on is, did you follow the policy? Trust me when I say this, that's their first thing.
And you know, you
That can pose a liability.
Well,
I don't think liability as much as it's a way for a lawyer to say you did something wrong. You know, I shared with y'all, we all went to that conference, and that superintendent in that district who had that horrific thing happen, they won every lawsuit they had, and he said at the end of it, and it stuck with me, it rings in my ears, he said, because we followed every bit of our policy. And obviously, this is apples and oranges, but I do think that lesson is a good lesson in terms of following policy. So I'm not pushing the board in any direction except to give me a policy so I can follow it.
well, and with that being said too, by no means am I going to tell y'all how old I am, but homeschool and private school kids have been playing in our district for a very long time. Even when I was in school, we had a certain religion that had a private school and kids were allowed to play. So this is a problem that we're tasked with correcting, fixing, mending, however that looks, but it's been going on for a very long time.
yeah,
It's
that's
not
what
a
I was
new
gonna say.
problem.
I'm like,
It's not a new problem.
It's a lot of
if it's a history of
It is
them
a lot of
playing
years.
and participating, and then all of a sudden something happens, and bam, it's like, oh, okay, no, they can't play. I really don't think that's fair.
Well, sometimes we
need
don't
to have a
know.
policy in
Sometimes
place.
it's just,
I'm not saying we don't have a policy. I'm saying we could put a policy in place, but does it have to be a policy that says they can't participate anymore?
Well, that's up to y'all as a board.
Yeah,
I mean, I
one or
know,
the other.
but I'm just stating that.
All the factors and the data so that we can make a decision that would be fair.
We would still have
Decision
to
is
vote on
yea or nay.
yes or no.
Yeah, or nay.
If we have a policy,
Yes.
the board has to vote yes or no.
Yes or no?
We can accept it or
Or not.
reject it.
well, simply
Our
voting no
policy needs
is
to
a
be
policy.
Developed to consider.
Right.
Right, simply voting no is a policy.
I guess my question to the board though is, could you vote Tuesday on a simple yes or no?
To
Okay.
vote without having a policy in place.
Well, and with that would be a
Being that we
caveat
had an
in
issue
there.
that brought us here.
If we vote yes, then there's no participation until the policy is complete.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
So you could vote in principle
Yeah.
and then develop a policy following up on that.
And we would have to be expedient with that and get it done.
But as you mentioned, we do have a policy committee and that we could address it during our policy committee meeting.
We should have one coming up pretty quick.
Yes, I think we're going to schedule it.
I think the only
We're
difference
going
on
to
our
discuss opening dates.
never mind.
So it sounds like we may be open, some of us, to considering it if we can get a policy that looks at addressing some of the concerns about grades and discipline. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? I know not everybody's in agreement with that, but overall, am I hearing that kind of the discussion is leaning towards let's find a policy that addresses grading, GPA requirements, and discipline?
I will stick with what I said the last meeting.
Everybody's not in agreement, and once we get all the policy, I think we'll be in a position to say yeah or nay.
Okay.
So our vote would.
Wait, is that?
What's gonna be the voting? What are we voting on?
So actually,
Voting on saying our homeschool, private school children can't participate in our sports? That's the question, that's the vote.
Well, they're saying if we vote that way, yeah, we vote, but they can't do it until you become a policy, until you find out what you want in the policy, what you
That's correct.
grade, point, and all that.
I think there has to be a yay or a nay, and then if it's yay, then we develop the policy. I think, I mean, that's, we should be the way to move forward.
You're gonna base a policy on if you don't vote yes or no. How you gonna make the policy?
Or invest the calories and time for something that may or may not take place. So, yeah, I think we need to decide whether we're gonna move forward or not.
So we can look at either, somebody nay, not in agreement at all, but then we can also look at a yes, contingent upon a policy and children not beginning to participate until that policy is in place, voted on by the board.
We're willing to consider it, but
Right.
not give it a complete yes vote until the policy's in place.
That sounds good, Rhonda.
If I may, currently the item on the agenda is not a voting item. So if you want to add that as a voting item, please email me tomorrow the wording for the voting item so that I can put it on there. Because
Yes, ma'am.
currently it's not a voting item.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's no further discussion on 7B, let's move down to 7C. This is policy KG, use of school facilities.
Say one thing just real quick in reference to this. So we have many policies to look at tonight. In general, these are all from legislation and not where we can go in and pick and choose, like change it to this or modify it in any way.
Correct. These are, every change you see in these policies were dictated by the recent legislation. We were waiting on LSBA to get us the updated versions in policy, and we have to have all these passed prior to January 1 to be compliant with the law.
And they were mandated by state law.
Right.
Correct.
So even
So
though
we
you may
just
not
review 'em,
like
yeah.
it, it's
Yes.
what's happening.
Right.
And to add to that, every one of these policies, what I did is I'm giving y'all, you all have it. If you go into the policy, it's, if you see things struck out or if you see things in bold and underline, that's additions. I have taken just some quick little notes to give you a kind of a quick reference to this. So use of school facilities, it's from Act 485 of the recent legislative session. And this allows any youth organization meeting the definition of patriotic society. This doesn't mean they just call themselves patriotic. It's actually in the U.S. Title 36 of the United States Code, shall be allowed to use the school facilities outside of the school day. Such organizations shall also have the authority to speak to and recruit students during the school day, but they have to get with the principal. They have to make sure it's not during instructional time, so on and so forth. If you Google the Title 36, these are not crazy organizations. It's like the VFW, Daughters of American Revolution, these groups that are well known, well respected.
Okay. Item 7D, policy GBRIB, sick leave.
The only thing you see as a change in this one is the term sick leave, the definition of it. If you go, you went too far. The term sick leave is used herein. It refers to leave on account of personal illness, other emergencies, or special circumstances. They wanted to give a little more flexibility to some sick leave. It still just can't be because you're going to Disney World, but the other emergencies and special circumstances allows a little bit more. Bold. I'm sorry. On some of them, actually, no. When they were sent to us, they were in blue, but I think we changed it all to bold.
Item 7E, policy CN, administrative records.
Okay, so a few things here. We put into policy how much our public records requests are. So that's going to be $1 for computer copies, $5 for hand-pulled copies because that takes extra work. And then if you have a massive file, it's $10 because we will purchase you a flash drive, and then we'll put that on there. We do not want other people's flash drives, so that's why it's a separate fee. Also, originally this policy said that you had to call and make an appointment to see records. That had to be changed because of state law to say that you can come anytime during office hours and get those. It does mean I cannot deny a request unless it causes a substantial disruption to the operation. For instance, I want every one of your records from 1920 to 1950, and I want them collated and all these things like that where it would take one employee, we'd have to pay an employee for 6 months just to do this job. What I have to first do is I have to say, why are you looking for this, and can we narrow your search? And then if it still is substantial, I can deny it, but it takes a lot of legal maneuvering to do that. But basically, it's being more transparent here. It's allowing them to come at any time during operational hours to access our public records.
Okay. Item 7F, this is policy JCDAF, bullying and hazing.
So prior to this, it said that the principal or their designee or the had to be the one who received bullying and hazing complaints. What this did is to change that to any employee can receive a bullying complaint. We don't want kids to be like, oh, I didn't see the principal today, so I'm not going to report bullying. We want them to go to whatever adult they feel comfortable with. So very simple.
Item 7G, policy GBN, dismissal of employees.
This also goes with the tenured bus drivers. They made a law that is specific to them. They receive, if you're a tenured bus driver and you are put up for termination, you receive 20 days between the superintendent's letter and the final letter, if that's what they decide. And so they clean some stuff up with that, and then also change some verbiage on the portion that speaks to written charges, and they changed it from written charges to receipt of the superintendent's interim disciplinary action. So this is just a small cleanup of the policy based on the state law.
Item 7H, policy GBK, employee discipline.
So this goes back to your bullying. Senator Jackson, I believe, was the one who put this through. If a principal is negligent, in reporting or handling a bullying situation, so a parent comes and says there's bullying, the principal's supposed to have a 10-day bullying investigation. There's the state form, which also this policy now mandates that form is on the website, which I'll happy to tell you that it's been on our website. It's on every school's website as well. But if the principal does not handle it properly, then that's reported to the superintendent. I immediately have to report that to the board, and then I have to do an investigation. I then report the findings of that investigation to the board. If the board finds that the principal was negligent in conducting that bullying investigation, they must receive anywhere between a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 10 days unpaid leave. This is somewhat controversial right now because I can tell you, and many of you are aware of this somewhat contradicts Act 1, and it's probably going to be litigated. But as of now, it is law, and we have to adopt it by January 1.
Okay, so does that principal or person that's accused of this, do they have the right to hear this out publicly or in executive session?
They would have the right to executive session.
Okay, that would be preferred, yes.
Okay, item 7I, policy JGFI, removal of students from campus.
Yes, so this is a policy where principals have to have a predetermined and established checkout policy, and specifically it states that no minor should be taken by a governmental agency except in cases by law enforcement, and then also this policy must be on the school website. I can tell you we have defined checkout policies, but we do need to place those on the websites for each individual school.
Miss Dorothy, do you mind speaking into the mic? IT is letting us know they can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Is the parent notified if they have to be removed by law enforcement? That was my question.
Yes, ma'am. Anytime we deal with law enforcement, whether it's a minor student or an adult student, we inform parents of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Item 7J, policy JT, student voter registration.
So this is a policy that was implemented. I'm a big fan of this to try to encourage our seniors at our high schools to register to vote. And it says if you're a 12th grader, we need to give you access to copies of the voter registration and also a computer at each one of the high schools dedicated to, it can be used for other things, but also allowed to use to sign up to register to vote.
Item 7K, policy JBCE, public school choice.
Okay, so last year we brought you a public school choice, and this is a little more robust version that came from this last legislative session. We had already developed capacity for our transfer schools, and they changed that to where it used to be you could determine it yourself. Now they've set it at 90% of the optimum enrollment minus the projected enrollment by grade. So if those equal and you subtract it into 0, then you have no capacity. But as long as you have capacity, you have to allow transfers based on the school choice law. School choice law says if you are at a D or an F school, you are allowed to transfer. It also sets the time for the transfer window, so it'll only be from March 1st to March 28th. We also have to post the D and F schools on the website. When we did this last year, all this was posted on the website and we actually gave about a 2-month period to do the transfers, but we will be abiding by this law. It also adds another piece allowed to transfer as well, and that would go through that same process. Also, it highlights again that transfers are on a yearly basis, so if you apply for that transfer, you have to do it every year, and then also transportation is not supplied. I would suggest you read through this policy. It is state law, but this is a pretty in-depth one. I gave you a little bit more information on it, but it is one I would suggest you take the time to read.
Okay. Item 7L, Policy IDDFA, Special Education Advisory Council.
So we already have a special ed advisory council, but this law gave some stricter guidelines on it. It says you must have 8 members, although it says as long as you can actually get the 8 members. We've never had a problem getting those people. 50% of those folks have to be parents. We can have employees, but they can't be part of that 50% who are also parents. At least one does need to be an employee, and 10% shall be other special education stakeholders. And then their annual report that they supply to me in May has to be put on the website, which we are currently doing.
Item 7M, Policy EBCB, Use of Video Cameras.
So what this says is in any classroom designated as a special ed classroom, specifically like a classroom that is a self-contained classroom, you have to have a policy that can allow for parental requests of video cameras in the classroom. I am happy to say that this policy we're implementing, but it is somewhat moot in our district because every classroom that is identified as a special ed classroom in our district either has a camera or is in the process of having one installed. This does not include regular ed classrooms that are have inclusion. These are only 100% special education classrooms. It also has all the paperwork that a parent has to go through. Now, once, say they want to see what's on the video camera, it also goes through the process they have to take part in to look at the camera footage and things of that nature. So it's a very long policy. This is another one that I would read in completion, but that's the basis of it. But again, it's not going to really affect us too much except for when parents ask to review footage.
Item 7N, Policy EDD, School Bus Scheduling and Routing.
So this is an interesting policy that we have here. It's only up there because they said we can get rid of it because it can also be spelled out in your agreement with your bus provider. It is the district's suggestion that we still keep it because it's a good policy and it spells out some things that we believe are very important, like where a bus should stop, and a lot of safety information that we still think is important to have in the policy manual.
Item 7O, Policy EBBH, Use of Automated External Defibrillator.
Yeah, so what it has in here basically is if you have the AEDs on your campus, it's not mandating that you have them, but if you have them on your campus, then you must maintain those devices, but then also maintain someone who has the credentials and the certifications to be able to implement that, because obviously they don't want people having the AEDs with no one to actually utilize them. Or dead batteries, correct.
Item 7P, Policy DJER, Purchasing Regulations and Procedures.
Yeah, so we had some verbiage in there that was problematic because it said, it just said for certain bids you can accept a lower bid. That's only allowed, we had to add for bids under 60,000, because anything higher than 60,000 you are subject to the public bid law and you have to take that lowest bid. And so they added 4 bids under 60,000. You can accept the lower bid. And then also they put some more legal language for what allows you to enter into the emergency purchasing policy. I think we just said when there's an emergency, what you actually have to have there is you have to have the emergency as dictated by law promulgated by like the governor and things of that nature, because they don't want people saying, oh, there was a storm in Natchitoches, it's an emergency, you can purchase. They want it something in law like we had, for instance, with the COVID emergency purchasing policy.
All right. Item 7Q, the 2023 board meeting calendar.
Yes, ma'am, and that has me down there, but I know Mr. Benefield had requested, I believe, for the board calendar, and I'm asking him as I'm saying this out loud, I believe you had requested
3 calendars.
3 calendars, and specifically, I think we said one that is the same as it was this past year, where we met on the same week, Tuesday and Thursday. What were the other 2?
The other was a Tuesday, and or a Thursday.
Okay. On that, do you still want, would that be second and third week? Would it be first and second week? What are you thinking in terms of that?
Started moving, and board members, please speak up. We moved it back a week. We were first Tuesday, Thursday, and then we moved back to second. And I think that was for staff consideration, was it not?
Correct.
So, because I don't think they had the information on
Right.
We would still want at least the first meeting to be on that second week to allow some of those reports to get, but I don't know if y'all are okay with going second, third week. We could still go first, second, but you would not get some of the information until that second meeting. So I just want to create 3 templates that y'all are comfortable with instead of something
Did everybody want 3 templates? I mean, is that what,
I'm cool with it.
we're fine as a
getting that?
as a staff getting those prepared.
I just think more choices, more problems, but
Some people want Tuesday, some people want Thursday, some people want to keep it like we are. Who knows?
yeah.
But the whole reason behind is giving us the
This
opportunity
month was very
to
confusing.
spend a week or several days. If we meet on Tuesday for committee as a whole, we walk out of here at 6, 7 o'clock. We try to get Mr. Wascom on Wednesday, and Mr. Wascom is doing whatever Mr. Wascom does, and so he's tied up. Thursday, he's pulling his hair out, getting ready for that long budget report, which he's going to give us. And then, so you don't reach him. So here we are, we don't have the information to make an informed decision or vote. So I just think if we stretch a few more days into it, it would give us that.
So what we'll do is we'll do the one that we've already done. Then we'll do second and third week for Tuesday, and second and third week for Thursday. Y'all look at those, and then worst case scenario, say you go with the Thursday, but you don't like that second and third week. The only thing you'd have to tell us is a substitute motion to do it first and second week or third and fourth week. Does that make sense? Okay.
Sounds like a lot of absences about to happen.
Keep in mind though, if it ends up floating into that third week of the month, we do have a couple of months where, like, for instance, November and December, where it's a very short month.
Yeah, we may have to back it up. And also, there'll be LSBA and there'll be other things. We're going to have to ebb and flow. We do that every year.
So we'll provide those 3, and then I think those will form a good basis to make a decision, even if they have to be tweaked a little bit.
Do we want these so that they're voted on at Tuesday's meeting? Is that when you're wanting these, or for? No problem. I can
Whatever
have
the
them-
board's pleasure is.
I'll have them ready for Tuesday.
We could vote on those in December. I mean,
I'll have them ready for Tuesday. Because it's on there, it would just need to be changed to a voting item.
okay.
Or I can have them prepared for Tuesday so that y'all can take them home and study them, and then put it on December's agenda for a vote.
That sounds good. It really doesn't matter until January anyway, right?
Yeah. It's whatever y'all want. I just need to know if y'all want to vote on them for Tuesday, because I'll have to make it a voting item before then.
Board members, what are? Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Give us time to think about it.
Okay, that concludes the executive report.
Okay, and if you will travel back in time, scroll up a few inches to the informational reports. Mr. Wascom is now present for the budget update and the sales tax report.
Okay, so let's do the budget update first. And yeah, I was
When y'all started this meeting, I was south of Alexandria hauling tail to get here, so anyhow. And, yeah, I listened to it on the internet the whole way up here and came in the whole time. All right, so wanted to let you know that column 3 is actual for the general fund budget. This same time last year is column 2, and the overall budget is column 1. I am happy with everything that I see. You will see that there's only been a nominal increase in payroll. The benefits, everything is looking like normal. I'm very happy with the general fund. I will tell you that the nutrition did not get posted. In column 3 under revenue for nutrition, I think last month she reported that there was a $300 and some odd $1,000 deposit that has obviously not been posted here. Also, the big one she reported tonight has also not been reported on this particular report. Part of the reason is that there is a delay with personnel problems with LDOE. When Sarah Rashow makes an adjustment in online, it shuts down our ability to go grab federal funds. Now, that's not the case so much with USDA with child nutrition, but as you will see with the other budgets with Title I, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, you'll see the revenue. See, Title I revenue collected is 0. I can tell you that when we finally get this resolved and we were able to submit, I think, is Ms. Rashow here? No, she's still not. She's not here. These monies will be collected, and it will be to where the total expenses and total revenues will equal each other. You can see also ESSER 2 money has not been collected, and yet we've spent almost $600,000. And you will also see ESSER 3. This all is a holdup with the fact that we were unable to pull. They don't have enough personnel to approve our updates and adjustments, and until they get it all approved, we can't go pull the money. They just did get it done the other day, and Tawana got right on submitting and getting a lot of our money to come in. Okay? Did also speak to Medicare, Medicaid while I was in Lake Charles earlier today. They assured me that the over $600,000 we were supposed to get at the end of May, first part of June, which has yet to arrive on last year's, is shortly to arrive. So we should be getting 2 of those large checks this year because we did not receive ours from last year. And I'm proud to say we were still able to keep the budget in the black with last year's budget with missing the large amount of Medicaid. It has to do with audits, and once again, it seems to be a theme throughout the state of state of Louisiana. Personnel at the Baton Rouge level, they are really struggling to keep all their positions filled so they can keep up with all this and all the money flowing towards us. So, anyhow. Or any other questions? I mean, because the obvious question about about the budget that we have prepared for y'all tonight is what's going on with all the federal funding and there's no revenue. That is an obvious problem, and I would like to say that by the next time next month, it'll all start showing up again, and our cash account will be refreshed with all this money that's now missing. We'll let y'all know that we have to spend this money out of our account up front, and then later we ask for it to be given to us from Baton Rouge, and so from the time we spend certain things, it often takes a month and a half to get the reimbursement. Well, heck, we're 3 months out now. We haven't had any reimbursements since July 1 expenses. But it will, like I said, it did happen last month. But yeah, general fund is not that way because we don't rely on federal funds for general fund money other than the indirect cost. Okay, any other thoughts or questions?
Mr. Wascom, can you give us a brief update? We hired that firm to help us collect insurance money, roofs and storm damage. Are we
Hurricane Laura?
Are we complete with that, or are we?
We have filed it. We have filed it. They are they have answered our filing, and that's where it stands. I can tell you,
Now, did they answer?
this is gonna
yes
be
or
a
they
long
answered
slog.
no?
What's that?
They answer it yes or they answer it no?
Maybe they tabled it.
Their comment to us is well, this would have to be a Joe Stamey discussion. The comment was, we don't really feel like you have a valid case.
Obviously.
I mean, that's what but they've been saying that from the beginning.
Well, when they were offering us 5 and we were looking for 300,000.
Oh, they offered us no money at all. Remember now, they offered us $0.
Below 100,000.
Yeah, well, it was 100,000 and a deductible was 100,000. What they offered us was $98,666 with a $100,000 deductible, and so they said that a Cat 2 storm can hit Natchitoches, cause all the damage that it did our facilities, and they owe us nothing.
Mr. Walsh, sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
but I do, because this is some current litigation, and I don't think we're delving into anything, but I did want to mention to the board that in December, we will have a discussion in an executive session about all current litigation, including this, in executive session after my evaluation. So,
Sure.
not to derail this current conversation, I just wanted to remind the board about that.
We haven't heard anything in the last 3 months, and I just want to know if they were at least considering it.
It's going to be a long one.
Okay. One more item, and you had to tweak 2 job descriptions in our salary schedule. Have you discovered anything else that you need to change?
We had the issue of teachers coming out of retirement that we wanted to hire to do substitute teaching.
No, you had two
one issue.
positions that you weren't aware of, and they somehow got by, and so you fixed those.
Right, one was attendance clerk, and
Yeah.
What he's saying is have there been any other major issues that
There
we've
have
seen
been
that we've
no-
missed so far?
I may catch it from here on out, but I have not
I
had
think
any.
the only thing that we, and this actually
had
goes a
anything.
bit further, is there's a discussion of coordinators cleaning up some language in the salary schedule that we've committed to for next March, or this
Correct.
coming March.
Well, I would also tell everybody that I see this as the salary schedule as we need to address this every year. And tweaking it constantly and not letting it be something 14 years and we've never done anything with it. And so I would like to say that we're going to address it, even if it's just to re-adopt it again each year. I would like to have this be something that the board adopts every year. And I know we have a few little minor picky-ish things up for next year, but nothing we had to deal with right now.
I heard very positive comments.
Really. It's good to hear. I don't hear all the positives sometimes.
And I see a lot of teachers, and several of them made a comment. You know, there are other parishes offering. I'm not going anywhere. I love my job at Natchitoches Parish, and what we pay. I'm not going anywhere, and that's good to hear.
Rodney from Sabine Parish, who does my job, came up to me today at Lake Charles and said, "Lee, are you going to be giving out any more races?" And I said, "Well, there are none currently planned." He says, "Well, thank God, because we lost another one to y'all yesterday." And I'm like going, "All right."
So he wasn't ready for a fist bump.
He just didn't. So
The next thing, and this is just kind of an appetizer of a conversation. The next thing I would like to discuss with y'all after the Christmas break is delving into the waters of incentive-based pay, which would not come from general fund. It would come from like Title II, Title I, but basically honoring our teachers and our principals who hit certain targets and giving them a payout at the end of the year for their hard work. And I think that's the next step of big rocks that we want to hit in terms of a salary schedule. So that'll just be something we can talk about in depth in a few months.
I have good news for y'all in the area of sales tax collections. And I am very happy about, I think this is my page. I think let's see here. There it is. Once again, when you go to the sales tax report I give y'all, it's the second to the last page. Usually this number right here is 7.22% increase. That is
Awesome.
remarkable. I would say that everybody knows how things are going with inflation and tightening of budgets and everything, how much food has gone up. I can tell y'all that I'm really pleased with this. I hope this sustains.
Mr. Wascom, just to reiterate, you have budgeted for no increase.
I have budgeted no increase because I'm still concerned, but yes, this is wonderful, and I hope this trend continues on. I'm really happy about this.
So we should be able to keep our reserves where they need to be too, right?
Oh, you're talking about the general budget reserves, or are you talking about the sales tax payments to teachers? Well, always remember when I report the 7.22 cumulative, and since this starts July 1, that you can pretty much tell your teachers that their sales tax check will be about 7.22% higher to distribute on ballpark numbers. It will be stronger than next December as it currently trends. And that's usually what almost everybody wants to know. But as far as the general fund is concerned, we're currently showing a positive balance. This will help increase, this will help increase the general fund revenues.
I was talking to some employees the other day about that. As long as the sales tax continues to go up, the pay raise that was just given a few months ago is steady going to go up too. So those figures are going to increase, every time they get that. So.
The little program we have hasn't worked. We haven't worked it. I will tell you that. Remember that the highest amount of sales tax that is given to any one person cannot exceed the highest paid teacher.
I know that.
But the highest paid teacher just got a bump. So you're right.
Oh,
I just don't know how it's all going to implement with everybody. You're right. I mean, I'll let you know because I don't know the nuances of the program that is written for us to manage that. But the highest paid teacher did get a raise.
But Mr. Wascom, I do want to, because we have had this question a lot, and not that this is what Mr. Garner was asking, but it jogged my memory. It is important to note, though, we have a system on our salary schedule that uses a multiplier. And a lot of our folks who had issues when the salary schedule came out, it was because they calculated their multiplier by including their sales tax money in that.
Correct.
And although, hey, we want sales tax to keep coming up, you don't calculate your multiplier using the sales tax figure. You only use your base salary. So I just want to, I'm sure that is boilerplate for everyone. Everyone knew that, but we had a few people who said, I should have gotten $1,000 more. And it's like, well, how did you calculate it? And correct.
I had to explain it to a couple of people.
Me too, but if you look at the overall picture,
Still,
steady going up.
should be still everybody's base pay went up. I can guarantee you that.
Like you said, until it just flattens out, it'll continue to go up.
Yes, which I'm all for. I think I will tell you, I'm kind of proud we did it when we did it with inflation doing what it's doing. I mean, I don't know what y'all's feelings are, but I'm sorry. It's just it was coincidental, but our pay raise went up just at the time when the nationwide inflation rate was going up. Not that it wasn't long overdue. It's just kind of nice to know that it hit at the right time.
Thank you, Mr. Wascom.
Sure.
You're greatly appreciated.
Sure.
Okay, and before we end the meeting, I do want to point out that we have two of our newly elected board members here tonight. We have Mr. Chad Fradu, if you want to wave, and not a complete stranger to us. And then on the back row, we have Miss Barbie Page, who will be sitting in Miss Rhonda's seat in January. So we're glad to have you at the meeting, and congratulations to both of you.
Yes.
Okay, is there any other business to come before the board? Meeting adjourned.